Give me big old buckets of butter beer. Give me big old barrels of butter beer. Give me the drink I love so dear. And another round for my friend right here of the sweet old butter beer.
Welcome to the Three Broomsticks. We invite you to pull up a chair, grab a butterbeer, and settle in for a hearty discussion about Harry Potter. I'm Irvin Cateman.
I'm Sophia Jenkins.
And today we have two guests with us. So first up is a returning favorite, Carolina. Welcome back.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasant surprise to be here because I've only been notified like half an hour ago, but I'm glad I could make it happen. So if I'm not very wise or don't sound so smart, it's because I have not prepared at all, but it's still going to be fun.
And if you do sound smart, then it just means that you're a natural genius.
Then we're going to be so impressed.
Yeah.
Yeah, Oreo had to call out sick, listeners, so Carolina swooped in half an hour ago to save the day. Do you want to just quickly remind listeners, your Hogwarts house, your favorites, and so on?
Yes, absolutely. My Hogwarts house is Ravenclaw. My journey to Potter is, discovered it in, I think, 3rd or 4th grade, and loved everything about magic and never looked back. And my favorite book, that's very difficult. I always switch around. I don't really have a favorite. I have a least favorite. It's the second one, but I can't really say which one is my favorite. My favorite characters are Hermione, Lupin, and Snape.
Fair enough.
Interesting.
There you go.
Well, so happy to have you with us. And our other guest is new at the Three Broomsticks, but anyone who's listened to a Harry Potter podcast in 20 years knows him and loves him. Andrew Sims. Andrew, welcome to the Three Broomsticks.
Hello. Pleasure to be here. I love the Three Broomsticks, so I'm very excited to be enjoying a nice meal with y'all this weekend.
Excellent. So, Andrew, why don't you tell us your quick Harry Potter profile, your Hogwarts house, your favorites, and your journey through Harry Potter?
Yeah, so my Hogwarts house is Slytherin. My favorite book is Order of the Phoenix. I just have one favorite character who's Dumbledore. I know people have concerns about him and don't think he shares enough information at certain times, but I'm all about him. And then my journey to Potter, actually, Caroline, I think you said 4th grade. Mine's 4th grade, too. My 4th grade teacher read the first book to my class back then. And right after she finished reading it, I went to the bookstore and found Chamber of Secrets there. I think it had just been released at the time. So it was like perfect timing in terms of falling further in love with Harry Potter. So, yeah, that was my journey to Potter, and excited to be here.
Yeah. Also 4th grade, for the record. That's when the first movie came out.
That's funny.
So I think that's the age.
Yeah, that's the age, the magic age for all of us.
Yeah.
Not for me, but I was close. For me, it was end of 2nd grade going to 3rd grade.
Oh, okay. Your teacher didn't read it to you, did they?
No. I read it over the summer on my own. But I'm guessing from hearing your stories that I'm a bit younger than you guys. So there are a few.
I was going to say.
Yeah, there are fewer of the books already out by that point. So yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, Andrew, I'm so impressed that you came in at the Chamber of Secrets level. That's really early.
Yeah, I mean, I just have my teacher to thank. It's just the timing was amazing. I just still remember walking into the bookstore, and at the front of the store was Chamber of Secrets. I think it had just been released, and I was like, well, Mrs. Wilson just finished reading book 1 to us, so why not pick this up?
Yeah. Awesome. Well, we're so happy to have you, and we're especially happy to have you for today's discussion, because today, for episode number 56, we have gathered to discuss safety and security at Hogwarts, or the lack thereof. Andrew, this has come up on MuggleCast once or twice, if memory serves.
Yeah.
So I was like, we need to just give Andrew a platform to just talk it out.
Thank you. Yeah, it's turned into a running bit on MuggleCast, and the reason it caught my attention, it was back in 2017, and I was at this Halloween party in Chicago, and I dressed as a Hogwarts hat stall, and some people who were there just were like, you know what, the school's actually like a security nightmare. I was like, huh, and then we were talking about it for like a half hour, I think, and then it was just been on my radar ever since as we do MuggleCast, so that's kind of the origins for me, but it's true, it's a security nightmare. And I'm excited to talk about it with you guys today.
Excellent. And listeners, we have some recommended reading for you because I also realized that Hogwarts is a security nightmare. In my early days at MuggleNet as their columnist, I wrote a series of editorials titled Did Umbridge Have a Point? And the conclusion was yes, because Hogwarts is a security nightmare. So we're going to link to that. Did Umbridge have a point? Punishment and safety. Obviously, the headline about Umbridge was just the hook to get people reading. And so obviously, every single one of the comments was, you're a terrible person for agreeing with Umbridge. And I was like, good, great, love the nuance.
Hey, but that's a catchy headline, Irvin.
I thought so too.
That's going to get people clicking in.
Yeah, because the best way to keep children safe is to have them in a detention where they cut words into the back of their hands. That's really the solution.
Okay, Sophia, but do you know the one book that no external forces breached Hogwarts security? Order of the Phoenix. Okay. I'm just saying.
Does Dolores Umbridge count as an external force, though?
No, she was appointed by the minister. She was there, perfectly legally.
Legally, sure, but Quirrell was also there legally.
Right. Yeah, no, I have no objections to Quirrell being there. It's the one on the back of his head that was the problem. Well, before we get into it, we got to give our Patreon shout out. And so our Patreon shout out today is actually also to Carolina. You are just saving the day today in so many ways.
Great.
Thank you so much for buying us this round of drinks at the pub.
Well, you're very welcome. I'm buying myself a drink.
Yay! Listeners, if you want to buy us around at the pub, please head over to patreon.com/3broomsticks with the numeral 3 to sign up. We offer bonus content, chats with the hosts, on-episode shout-outs, and a lot more. And we'd really appreciate your help keeping the lights on here so we can talk about Harry Potter for a long time to come. And before diving into this episode, we also have to raise a toast to the comments on episode 53. This episode was our chapter discussion for Sorcerer's Stone, chapter 14, Norbert the Norwegian Ridgeback. And we raise our glass to commenter Absent-Minded Raven, who said, maybe this chapter is one that was least modified from early drafts. It's hard to see how you'd change or remove it, because you've then got to find another way to convey that someone got Hagrid to blab, the trio finding things out from Hagrid, and the kids getting in enough trouble to be given detention in the forest. In some ways, it's an early or less polished example of the author distracting you from the details that will be relevant later with a, look, flashy thing. Yeah. I thought this was a really good point because we talked a lot about that episode about how, the chapter is sort of perhaps the most episodic in the series where it's a completely self-contained adventure. Just we open with Norbert, there's a dragon egg, we close with Norbert being gone, and we're done. And yeah, I definitely think it's different from Joe's style later in the books where, the little slice of life chapters have 8 different subplots weaving in and out of each other. So yeah, I thought this was a really good point. Yeah.
And it's a good point of showing that this chapter in some way was necessary for the Forbidden Forest chapter. The Forbidden Forest chapter is the part that's much more important to the actual plot. And that this chapter, even though it is self-contained, did sort of push the plot forward to that point. Yeah. I mean, I was watching the first 2 movies lately because they were just re-released into theaters. And it struck me that, they kept the whole Norbert thing in Sorcerer's Stone. And I was like, CGI dragons can't be cheap, right? And I was like, if you, needed to cut a subplot, it seemed like a ripe candidate. But they chose not to, I think, because sort of the same thing. They realized you kind of needed to, weave that whole Hagrid arc through the book.
or the movie.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but it continues to crack me up that Sorcerer's Stone, I believe, is the longest movie in the film series, and it's the shortest book.
Yeah, I think that's true.
I think that makes sense, and I think that's great.
Yeah.
Dude, rewatching it for the first time in a decade was such a trip. Also, there are so many things that don't make a damn lick of sense. Like, that just struck me right now. Like, I never realized, but in the movie, Harry gets the Nimbus 2000 the morning of the Quidditch match. They're like sitting at breakfast and Hermione's like, you have to eat something before the match, and then the mail arrives. And I was like, so he's just like, I guess I'll get on this broom and we'll see what happens.
Actually, I was wrong. Chamber of Secrets is the longest movie. My apologies.
Fair enough.
But yeah, honestly though, I don't know how recently you've watched the later movies, because they are even more wild in things that just straight up make zero sense. Like, I feel the first movie at least is a short book and a long movie, so they can get in most of the plot points, but some of the later ones are just wild.
Yeah. No, definitely, like, the first two movies, like, my nitpicks are very much that. They are, like, small nitpicks, where I'm just like, that was silly. But yeah, it's not like the later ones where they just, like, left out whole plots.
Yeah.
Though, can I just say, we watched Chamber of Secrets yesterday. My favorite thing is when Tom Riddle does the, like, I am Lord Voldemort, like, swaps the letters and everything, Harry's like, you're the heir of Slytherin. And I was like, that's your takeaway? Oh, it's so funny. But okay, let's dive into the safety and security of these poor children at Hogwarts. And I figured we'd do security first, which, like, I guess I view as keeping the kids safe from external threats, and then we'll do safety afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
You know, fun fact, if you can't hear it, I'm German. There is not really a word for, like, a different translation for security and safety in German, and actually in many other languages. I know because I work a lot with safety and security. So I always have to think for a second what part is security and what part is safety.
Interesting. Yeah, because it's a subtle difference between them. Yeah.
It is a very strong difference, actually, but we don't really have two separate words. We just have one word for both.
Yeah, I mean, it is a strong difference, but also, like, I can see why it would be hard to keep track of which is which, you know? It's, like, subtle enough that it's kind of like...
True.
Yeah.
I mean, it's similar in Russian. So in Russian, there's, like, words for security in terms of, like, you know, like, protecting someone, like a security detail. But, like, in terms of, like, what we're talking about just, like, keeping them secure, like, there's no separate Russian word for that either.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm there with you.
Same in many languages.
I'm really glad we have, you know, someone outside of the US on this podcast, because I think on that Did Umbridge Have a Point editorial series, I definitely got a comment. It's like, oh, typical Americans want to baby everyone. So, yeah, maybe you'll offer some counterpoints. But
I'll try to be smart. See how good that works.
So what I found so interesting about trying to figure out, like, the security is how it all works and, like, who's in charge of it. Because my understanding of, you know, just picking things up throughout the series is that questions of security, like, all come down to the headmaster. That, like, the power to add or remove protections or whatever is just entirely vested in the head of Hogwarts.
I would say also the Ministry a little bit, like in book 3.
Yeah.
Having the Dementors there.
Yeah.
I also think Dumbledore, as the headmaster, he is the headmaster, but Dumbledore specifically has a very, a strong point about making everything safe for good reason. So maybe in a different time, there wouldn't have been so many protections made by the headmaster.
Yeah.
So you think it's gotten increasingly secure since Dumbledore stepped in?
I mean, not right at the beginning, I think, but increasingly, I mean, he says so, right? They are increasing the protection because of Harry and all the circumstances around Harry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think because of Voldemort, I would say Voldemort coming back to power, and I assume when he was in power the first time, and the fact that not only is Voldemort in power, but also he's like obsessed with a teenager who's at Hogwarts. I think that we have evidence. I mean, we have clear evidence in the books, and I would assume that the same was true in the first Wizarding War, that the security gets stronger in wartime.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I feel like sort of every single book, they're like, things are really dangerous now, so we've increased security. Like, now random men can't fly into the school, and we're like, as opposed to before when you felt so safe they could. Cool.
But I mean, that's now taking on my German role here. I think security in schools in the US is handled very differently to security in schools in Germany. Because in most German schools, you could just walk in.
Yeah. I mean, and that, I think, in the US, in certain cases, was true as well. Until more recently, when there have been more like school shootings and stuff like that. But I think I've seen, even in my time of being in schools in the US, increased security over time, because there was a time where it would not have been that hard, like, if you're, especially like if you're an alum of the school, which in Hogwarts case is literally everyone. You show up and you're like, oh, I'm here, know? And it's not like that big a deal.
Yeah, anecdotally, my mom and sister both work at a school in New Jersey, and it used to be pretty much an open door policy, but now you have to buzz in to just get into like the front office of the school, and that's because of, like we're alluding to, the things that have happened in this country over the last 10 or so years.
Yeah.
But okay, but also counterpoint. Don't you want to? Isn't it different with a boarding school? Like, sort of, I'm less freaked out by people, like, strolling into a school in, like, broad daylight when classes are in session, as opposed to, like, you could just fly in the middle of the night when, like, 1,000 children are sleeping.
I mean, the dormitories... Yeah,
the dorms
they
are
have
secure.
security measures.
Yeah, it's not like Charlie's Friends.
I mean, yes, that is the one that I keep coming back to.
So let's take the example of Charlie's Friends. Like, this is partly maybe why kids aren't allowed to just wander around at night.
Because everyone else is?
Yeah.
But it's just like, you want to, not to be weird, but like, you don't want kids to be just like wandering around where, when the teachers live at the school and like, I don't know. I don't mean to be like weird and like pedophilia or whatever, but that's always a concern, you want the kids to be somewhere specific that only certain people know how to get there. So Charlie's Friends, if they came into Hogwarts, they would not know how to get into the dormitories because they wouldn't know the password because they're not at Hogwarts.
This actually makes so much sense to me, because I always thought it was ridiculous that, the teachers are like, you're out of bed at midnight, 400 points from Gryffindor. Because I'm like, if I live there, why would I not be wandering where I please at midnight? Like, I was like, is this a British thing where they sleep at night? But actually, from a security standpoint, where the castle is just open to everyone, that actually makes a lot more sense to me.
I mean, I think it's both, Erwin. I think you're the only one not sleeping at night. Usually kids should be in bed.
Excuse you, I am in a city of 8.5 million people who don't sleep at night.
Okay. But think about it. Like, if you're having a bunch of 11 and 12-year-olds, like, okay, imagine, like, when kids have a sleepover or whatever, and they are just like when kids have the option to just do whatever they want at night, they are going to be causing problems. They're going to be running through the corridors at night, like, doing random stuff, like maybe be like, I'm going to go flying in the middle of the night. I'm going to wander into the Forbidden Forest.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Well, that's not safe because the teachers want to sleep too and they can't watch them.
No, they don't.
Oh,
you
yes,
are
they
a
do.
liar. The teachers do not want to sleep.
Maybe that's what the ghosts are for. They can patrol at night while the teachers sleep.
No, but what are the ghosts supposed to do? The ghosts can't stop them.
I don't know. Try to tell
They're
them off.
supposed to holler.
Better than nothing.
I mean, you do not want kids just randomly wandering around a huge castle when there are no adults awake to watch them. Like, that to me is the most logical rule ever, regardless of Hogwarts security measures.
Okay, but Snape and Filch don't ever sleep.
Okay,
so it's not like there are no adults wandering around.
If they don't want to sleep,
Exactly.
I think they have a Harry sensor, and as soon as Harry walks through his dormitory door, they're like, oh, he's awake.
Also,
follow
the
him.
kids are not allowed to go out after a pretty early time in the evening. So
A very early
exactly.
time.
So when Harry is wandering around at night and Snape and Filch are around, it's probably 11:30 or 12. And they might just not go to bed until maybe 1 in the morning, but that doesn't mean they don't sleep.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, that's why when you say the teachers want to sleep at night, I was like, I don't think all of them do. What I don't understand about this whole keeping kids in is you have a way of knowing who isn't in their dormitory, like the portraits. Why can't the fat lady just be like, hey, I just saw 2 first years leaving at 10 o'clock, so
Well, I think they also consider that a job, and they also don't want to stuck around the whole day and night in their portrait. And also, they're not super reliable. And I don't think every dormitory has
exactly.
a portrait, right?
That Gryffindor is the only dormitory that has a portrait. So it'd be a bit unfair if Gryffindors were the only one who got snitched on, and all the other ones are just fine.
Wait, no, but the Hufflepuff one, isn't that...
No,
isn't
they
it
don't
also...
have a portrait.
No, that's the kitchens. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You're thinking about a pair. Yeah.
I am. I was like, listen, you could just have bowls of fruit, rolling through the wizarding portraits being like, students out of bed. Send a pear if it's a first year, send a banana if it's more than 3 of them. You could build up a whole code.
Yeah, so I think, for fairness' sake, the fat lady is not going to snitch.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. But, okay, so... We're on the subject of flying into the school. So this is one of the things that we really see changing. It's one of the first security measures put in where, again, in the first year, just whoever feels like it just flies into the school at any hour of the day or night, it's fine. But then by Prisoner of Azkaban, Hermione is saying oh no, you can't fly into the school. This is all at the discretion of the headmaster because we actually see Dumbledore remove this protection in Half-Blood Prince. Mm-hmm. Everyone's like, you can't fly into the school, you can't fly into the school. And then Dumbledore's like, I need to fly into the school. And so just gets on a broom, removes the spells, and they fly onto the astronomy tower. And mind you, also, Dumbledore undoes it in a minute. So I was like, he's either very powerful or the security can't be all that complex.
I think it's Dumbledore. I think it's Dumbledore.
If you are headmaster, I think you could switch these protections on and off like a light switch. Hopefully it is that easy for them to do. Yet secure enough where nobody else could do it but the headmaster.
Yeah, and also I think maybe it's certain things I think are probably easier to undo if you were the one who put it into place than if you aren't. There's some sort of switch in there where it's I'm the one who has control over this. Nobody else can control this.
Yeah.
I think so too, yes.
Okay, so that's flying in. I actually am really interested in the question of portkeys.
Yeah.
Because this is sort of where the headmaster versus the ministry versus who all is in charge comes in. Okay, first of all, creating unapproved portkeys is illegal. We find that out. That doesn't seem like much of a deterrent for anyone trying to get into Hogwarts for nefarious purposes, but it is illegal.
Yeah.
But so the only person we see create a portkey into Hogwarts is Dumbledore. He does it in Order of the Phoenix after the Department of Mysteries debacle.
Yes, but we also have the point of a vanishing cabinet. Is it similar to a portkey? Is it the same? Because
no, that's a whole separate thing. Vanishing cabinets are a separate form of magic. I don't think they're portkeys.
So we see Dumbledore both make in Order of the Phoenix, both make a portkey out of and into Hogwarts.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I imagine out of... I was going to say out of isn't as big an issue, but no, you don't want kids teleporting out of the school either.
Right.
So...
I mean...
Yeah.
Yeah. I think probably... It's interesting, yeah. Is it that it's Dumbledore's power as headmaster that allows him to do it? Or, because Fudge, when he makes the portkey into Hogwarts, he's like, you don't have the authority to make a portkey. He doesn't say, well, I guess he doesn't know where the portkey is going, but he does, because Dumbledore says that Harry is going to go back to school, and then he makes the portkey. So I think Fudge should be smart enough to know that that's what the portkey's purpose is for. So he says that it's not Dumbledore's authority to make a portkey, but he doesn't say anything about it being into Hogwarts. You can't make portkeys into Hogwarts. That's impossible. That's
so is Dumbledore's protection around the school you can't go into Hogwarts by any magical means, therefore not flying, therefore not portkeys, therefore question vanishing cabinets, but he just opens up a hole for him flying through and a hole for the portkey connection, because otherwise why can he do that and nobody else can?
Well, so that's what I was alluding to in the beginning. So because he's the headmaster, and I think there is sort of an inherent power in the headmaster, which I want to get back to. But to your question, I don't think it's a blanket magical protection bubble around Hogwarts. I think there's sort of ad hoc. I think there's one spell saying you can't fly in. There's another spell saying you can't portkey in. I don't think there'd be an effective way to sort of do all of that. So I think you have to go piece by piece, and that's why we see the protections being built up over the years as we get more secure.
And I mean,
which is so funny because the school is quite old at this point. It's they should have had most of this figured out by now.
Well, and that's my thing. It was now we want to keep the kids safe. The 998th year the school's in service.
I think some of it is people until something becomes a problem, people often don't think about it. I think that's usually... so I think throughout most of Hogwarts history, I guess, it hasn't been a problem, so nobody has done anything about it.
And also you can take back safety measures. Think about the Dementors that were taken back because they were very unpractical. And maybe there was a different dangerous time where portkeys weren't allowed or weren't possible. And then they said, it would be handy to have portkeys and no one is in danger, so let's undo that. So I think it doesn't mean that there's never been that kind of protection.
Yeah.
Right. So what's interesting is also, you said there's power in being the headmaster. And to me, that's clearly something that comes from the school. I'm thinking of the school as its own magical entity with a little bit of a consciousness. Because when Dumbledore makes that portkey to go back in, he's not technically headmaster, according to the Ministry at that point. But the school still considers him headmaster, because the school doesn't let Umbridge into his office. So, that he still has that power, even though the Ministry doesn't see him as having that power anymore.
Yeah. Almost like it's kind of come down from the founders, some magical power that you gain access to when you are... given the headmaster role. Yeah. In terms of the portkeys, it would have been nice if Dumbledore sort of figured out a way to kind of funnel all portkey, all Floo transportation to one specific spot in Hogwarts. So you couldn't just show up wherever you wanted to if you found a way to get in or hack the system. It's sort of like a check-in. Here in the Muggle world, we were talking about schools earlier. You have to go through the front office first. If you're coming in anyway, you must go through the headmaster's office first or somewhere else.
Well, so what I'm curious about is whether, like, anyone besides the headmaster has the power to portkey in and out. Because, like, we know the headmaster has that power, but because we never see anyone else do it, I was like, I think it's open-ended whether, like, the Minister of Magic could portkey in, or if it's entirely at only the headmaster. And I think I might be leaning towards it being just the headmaster because of what Sophia said. I think, like, you know, Hogwarts itself would sort of choose who is allowed in and out and would only permit the rightfully recognized.
And I think that,
sense.
like, most of the time, like, someone like the Minister of Magic, he can just apparate to the edge of the grounds and then be let in or whatever. It doesn't help that much to be able to portkey in and out. Whereas for Dumbledore, he's sending Harry by portkey because Harry can't apparate or anything. Like, it's for Harry's sake, not because that's the most convenient way for other people to get in.
Yeah. I also think if we're talking about portkeys in and out of Hogwarts, we have to discuss the Triwizard Cup.
No doubt.
Which, like, I spent so much time puzzling through this for my Dumbledore book, because it's very sloppily stated in the text. So, like, my understanding, just trying to logic it out, is that the portkey was created to take the champion from the maze to the grounds. That, like, the headmaster or the ministry or whoever would have the authority to make, like, that portkey. And I think that when Crouch Jr. says he turns it into a portkey, I think that's a very sloppy way of saying that he added a stop. So I think instead of being, like, maze to grounds, he made it go maze to graveyard to grounds. Because, like, otherwise, like, none of it really makes sense.
Yeah. I
agree with that. And, I mean, there still is the question of, like, I mean, to be honest, okay, so if we're taking that as true, which I'm just taking that as true because otherwise it doesn't make sense. Like, why didn't, like, Moody just hand Harry, like, a textbook and it portkeys him?
Yeah.
Like, you know.
Exactly.
So, assuming that is true, it must be, like, kind of like with the Goblet of Fire, that is this, like, highly magical object that Crouch manages to, like, confund or whatever to not understand how it's supposed to work. I think it must be something like that here, where it's like Dumbledore has put something on it that's saying you can only go within the grounds, or this is where you're going, or maybe, like, Dumbledore might have f***ed up. Like, he might have, like, not closed whatever loophole to say, like, this is the only possible place that this cup could go. Like, maybe that's what it is like, that he made this cup saying, okay, this cup is going to bring someone from here to here, but not close whatever security loophole that would have been, like, and it can't possibly go anywhere else, including outside the grounds. And then Moody is able to slip in there and make that happen. I don't know. Yeah,
I mean, we don't know how hard it is magically to, like, tamper with a portkey.
Yeah.
Like, you know, for all we know, like, adding, you know, an extra stop to a portkey could be easier than doing it on Lyft or Uber, because that's always a pain.
Well, sure, but then, like, easier in general, but given that I assume by this point there's a security measure in place that you can't have a portkey that leaves the grounds, then...
Well, so I think that, like, Dumbledore, when making the portkey, would sort of, like, you know, use his security clearance to be like, this portkey is approved to portkey, like, away in the grounds and to portkey into the grounds. And so, like, once the security clearance was, you know, in place, then you can sort of mess around with it.
That's kind of what I'm saying, is that he didn't, like, close the loophole of, like, he didn't think to be like, this can only go inside the grounds and it can't go out of the grounds. Like, he didn't, like, close all of the security loopholes there.
Yeah.
And maybe that's just how it works. I don't know.
What shocks me is it's such an important item in the Triwizard Tournament. And at this point, there are rumblings that Voldemort is trying to return to power and the Death Eaters are getting back together. Why weren't there further checks on the cup to ensure there weren't going to be, anybody had tampered with it? And on a related note, I mean, just putting your name into the Goblet of Fire to begin with, there should be a record of who is putting each name into the goblet. There needed to be more than an age line.
I mean, agreed on that last point, but I think, for all we know, I think there probably were a lot of checks on the Triwizard Cup. Because I think they all would have happened before the tampering. Because Crouch Jr. says that he volunteered to take the cup into the maze. So I think it's it went through all the security checks, all the magical checks, everyone from every ministry, made sure that the portkey did what it was going to do. And then Dumbledore's like, all right, good, we're done. Here, trusted best friend Moody, just take this thoroughly checked portkey into the maze.
Yeah.
At which point he tampered with it.
And, it makes sense that in Dumbledore's eyes, this is the final, security check, is, Moody, who is the most paranoid person ever, will make sure that this cup gets there safely and is not tampered with because he, can see all threats. And I'd see how in Dumbledore's mind it's yeah, of course I'm gonna have Moody be the one to put it in the maze. That will be the safest possible thing to do.
Yeah. So I actually think, if we're going off this, I think it's actually strong evidence for the fact that only the headmaster can portkey in and out, because otherwise, you already have Crouch Senior Imperiist. So, if ministry officials can also do portkeys, then guess what? Crouch Senior turns a textbook into a portkey, we give it to Harry, and we sort of skip the whole Triwizard rigmarole.
Yeah, I think that Dumbledore has to be the one who makes the portkey. I think that makes sense. So,
okay, if we assume that this is, inherent power in the headmaster, I have so many questions about how it all works. So I think we're pretty clear that Umbridge couldn't do any of this stuff because the school didn't recognize her.
Yeah.
What about Snape? Do we think Snape had the power to unilaterally, portkey people into the school and have them fly in?
Absolutely, I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
He could use the office.
Yeah.
I think he was recognized by the school, yes.
Yeah, I would think once you have a certain seniority at the school, you get special permissions if you ask for them. And I think we could definitely see Snape being one who could get those permissions.
Yeah. Well, actually, about the office, so I know it says that the office seals itself against Umbridge, which I love, but I've also read a theory that actually Dumbledore just came back and sealed the office against her because he's a petty bitch, and I love that too. Yeah. So
I think it's more, I like it better if it's the office sealing itself, because it's just
Agreed.
You don't deserve to be here.
Yeah. But then if Headmaster of Hogwarts is this inherently magical role where it's not just an administrative post, how's it work? Is there a big initiation ceremony? Because clearly if the ministry saying Dolores Umbridge is now headmaster is not enough to be vested with these powers, how's it all happen? What's it all look like? Oh, I have so many questions. You know
what I think? And this just came to me right now. I think it might be kind of like the wand choosing the wizard kind of thing, where it's it might be that Hogwarts has to choose, yes, the Board of Governors or whoever chooses the next headmaster, but Hogwarts has to, approve of that choice. It could decide to deny the headmaster. And, if it decides, yes, this person is suitable, then, it is willing to, the magic of the school is willing to, bend itself to the will of that person. It's a relationship between them.
I really love that, actually.
Yeah, that's really cool. It kind of reminds me of the Sorting Hat, where it's this separate entity who's thinking for itself and making decisions. I know the students can kind of try to influence it, but it feels like similar magic to me.
Yeah. And like when Dumbledore says, like, I'll only have truly left the school when none others here are loyal to me. To me, that's sort of speaking to some of that magic where it's like the school is still loyal to Dumbledore. So if students are loyal to him, like, the school will, like, step in and, like, help out. Because, yes, Fawkes is the one who, like, comes when Harry is loyal to Dumbledore. But, like, how would that work? Like, Fawkes is not, like, doesn't have, like, supersonic hearing. Like, you know, the school is, like, the one with the magic.
Pick me. I think that the reason Fawkes comes with the Sorting Hat is the Deluminator magic. I think it's when Harry says Dumbledore's name that Dumbledore hears it with the Deluminator magic and sends Fawkes and the Sorting Hat in.
So you think that every single time that Harry and maybe other people are saying Dumbledore's name, Dumbledore hears it? Or is it just Harry?
I think it's just Harry. I think when Dumbledore leaves the school in Chamber of Secrets and he knows this boy he's very invested in is going to get himself into trouble, he activates the magic. And then whenever Harry says Dumbledore's name, Dumbledore hears it. Because if you look at the passage in Chamber of Secrets, Fawkes and the Sorting Hat show up like, you know, a minute after he says, like, Dumbledore's name for the first time. And we never see him use Dumbledore's name, like, in Chamber of Secrets between the departure and that scene.
Interesting. I'm not 100% sold, but I do like the theory. I guess the theory that I'm putting forth is that it's, like, sort of the magic of the school, that the school is still loyal to Dumbledore, and when it hears someone else being loyal to Dumbledore, it, like, calls forth, like, the help, you know? It, like, is able to communicate to the headmaster of, like, you know, there's this student who's loyal to you who needs help. Because there's also the, like, help will always be given to Hogwarts to those who ask for it idea. And that feels like kind of the magic of the school, not just the magic of Dumbledore.
Fair. I think because it's said by Dumbledore and directed to an invisible Harry, I think I lean towards more of a hard magic explanation than a soft magic explanation for that one.
Sure, sure.
But I do also like Dumbledore just flexing, being like, well, Hogwarts is still loyal to me, so what you gonna do?
Yeah.
I think it also sounds very much like the founders to put so much magic in the castle that it can protect itself from outsiders. And the ministry is probably much, much younger. So I full-heartedly agree with the school has some kind of veto power or has to agree with the headmaster. I think that just sounds like the founding fathers. Sorry.
It's not wrong.
Yeah. Well, not all of them were fathers, right?
Right.
Well,
Founding parents.
the founders of Hogwarts, putting that kind of magical protection in place.
Yeah. Well, to me, okay, now that I'm thinking about this, after Snape is kicked out as headmaster, I think that the school kind of chooses McGonagall as the new headmaster, even though I doubt that she was still the deputy headmistress, because she's, like, not on Voldemort's side, you know? It's probably someone else, one of the Caros or whatever. I think the school chooses her as the new headmaster because she is the one who, like, calls on the school to, like, defend itself, like, calls on the, like...
Do your duty to our school.
Exactly, and that Hogwarts listens to her. Like, I don't think Hogwarts would have listened if one of the Caros said that, you know?
No.
I think that the school is, like, has chosen McGonagall, and she has that power now.
I love that.
I also don't know if she isn't deputy headmistress anymore, because I think Snape could twist it in a way saying that he needs her help keeping the non-Slytherin students in line, and she wants to do everything to protect the kids. So she would probably agree to still be in that position.
I really don't see that. Like, she's been so strongly, she's like part of the Order of the Phoenix. She's been strongly for Dumbledore like the whole time, and Voldemort knows that. He is not gonna, and like Voldemort is perfectly, as he's shown, perfectly willing to kill Snape if he needs to. Like, I don't think that he would have her as the deputy headmaster.
Who else?
I think one of the Caros. I really do.
Do they actually help in that position?
Yeah. No, I'm with Carolina on this one. I think that Snape could spin it as like, it's just an administrative role. She's not going to have any real power. So like, we may as well have McGonagall like doing the paperwork for, continuity purposes, so it doesn't look that bad. I think Snape could sell it.
Oh, I really don't think so, but okay.
Yeah. Andrew, where do you come down on this?
I'm trying to think of an analogy here, but because I like this point that you brought up, Irvin, like kind of, this is going to sound like a strange analogy, but on Wheel of Fortune right now, Pat Sajak left, right? They kept Vanna White, and I feel like it helps with the transition. With McGonagall, I think it could be the same thing here. It's helping with the transition. It's helping smooth things over.
I don't think they care about smoothing things over.
But how does it look to parents?
Putting the Cruciatus curse on kids. No, but they don't care about the parents. The parents are terrified. They're not going to do anything. What I could see is potentially Voldemort saying that Slughorn might be the deputy headmaster, because Voldemort does respect Slughorn, and I think believes that he would be able to control him. So I think it's probably more likely the Caros, but the Caros are dumb. So I think Voldemort respects Slughorn enough that he would be willing to have Slughorn temporarily the headmaster, because he believes that he could scare him into submission and knows that he, I think he respects him as a wizard and all of that.
But also, McGonagall's role was more in, I think, espionage as a cat. So she wouldn't have been on the front lines of the Order of the Phoenix's battles. So, Voldemort may not think of her as, a leader of the resistance. He may just think of her as, someone who was close to Dumbledore, in a working together sense. Because we also don't know what kind of relationship Tom Riddle and McGonagall had when they were at school together. So, yeah, I don't think you can say that, Voldemort would know that McGonagall's a threat and, wouldn't risk anything.
I think he would know that she is a lot harder to intimidate than someone like Slughorn. That she's clearly pro-Dumbledore and is not an easy person to scare and intimidate.
But in which situation would he have to intimidate her, or would he be scared of her being in that position? Because I think he thinks if he has to kill Snape or Snape dies for whatever reason, that he can just replace her. I think he's arrogant enough to not care about that so much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? I don't know if he, I don't know what he thinks he would do in that situation. But anyway, I guess that's honestly not that important to the security conversation. So let's move on.
Yeah. Okay, so, apparition and, disapparition. So this is actually one of the, age-old protections. People portkeying in and out of the school, meh, we'll talk about it. People flying in, no big deal. But apparating, that's a no-go. Because Hermione says, that, you can't apparate into Hogwarts, everyone knows that, and it's in Hogwarts a history. So that's clearly not a, we added it last year protection.
Yeah.
Which, again, that makes me wonder, is the whole apparating, non-apparating thing also at the discretion of the headmaster? Or was it, just built in by the founders, no exceptions, no ifs, ands, or buts.
Well, it is built in because of when apparition lessons are held at Hogwarts, it's lifted within the Great Hall.
Oh, I forgot about that.
So, and I have always assumed that meant that, like, you can apparate within the Great Hall, but not that you can just, like, during that hour, like, apparate into Hogwarts, into the Great Hall, or anything like that, or apparate out of Hogwarts, out of the Great Hall. But, like, within the Great Hall, you can apparate. And, you know, he says that Dumbledore lifted the protection for that purpose. So, yes, Dumbledore has the power.
Okay, so that is also at the headmaster's discretion. I guess just the headmasters of long ago decided to do that.
In the name of education.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe apparating and disapparating is something that was discovered very early on, and portkeys maybe is something a little bit newer, and brooms as well.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. You can see why this rule was put in place, though, and it's so apparent why it would need to be there from the get-go. Just the idea of anybody appearing or escaping from any room seems not just a security issue, but just a privacy and respect concern. And you could see students would love to do this if they were allowed to, just popping in and out of wherever, or easily, let's say, go home and get back into class immediately.
Yeah, you don't want people apparating into the prefect's bathroom.
No. Or the bedrooms, or into classrooms, out of classrooms. It would just be chaos all the time.
Right. And like, especially when we're talking about, you know, kids who are like 16 and 17 maybe haven't passed their apparition test, and they're just like splinching themselves all over the place. It'd be chaos.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, because don't they say in the apparition lesson, like, don't try to apparate out of Hogwarts. It won't go well for you. But there is one very big exception to the whole apparition thing, which is house-elves. They just come and go as you please.
Yes.
And I was curious about this, whether it's just the fact that, like, wizard magic can't keep out house-elves, or is it just that, like, no one thought they needed to keep out house elves? Or is it deliberate and you want house elves to be able to apparate in and out because of the Hogwarts house elves, and you want them to, like, be able to go to the grocery store and, like, you know, pick up food?
It is an interesting question.
And then it could be a deliberate exception.
I think it's absolutely deliberate.
Yeah, and they wouldn't abuse the privilege like the students would at the school. Plus, maybe the house elves get a little perk just for all the work that they do. And I'm also just picturing all the house elves, they're little people, or little creatures. So, yeah, what are they going to do? Walk? Take a train? I think it makes most sense for them to be apparating. I love this idea of them going to get groceries, though. Like, I don't know. That seems like a lot of extra work for them.
I don't think they need to get groceries because you can't
make food appear out of nowhere. You got to get it somewhere.
All you have to do is keep a couple extra carrots and then, like, make more carrots. Like, you know, you can multiply food you already have. Mm-hmm. So you just keep a little bit of every type of food, and then you just multiply it when you need it. So I don't think you need to go grocery shopping.
Oh my god. So wait, do you think they have, like, the one master carrot and the one master potato that they just multiply?
100%.
The master farm.
I think all wizarding households, I seriously think that wizarding households, like, they have, like, just, like, you know, one of each grocery, you know, with a spell to keep it fresh, and you just make more. Yeah.
Oh god, I mean, well, but by that logic, like, food should be astronomically expensive in the wizarding world. Being like, you buy one carrot for the rest of your life. Like, that carrot should be like 100 galleons.
You just go to a muggle grocery store. It's not like they eat different vegetables. But anyway, we digress.
Oh, but this is fascinating.
What I was gonna say is, okay, I think a few things about this. I think that house elves are intentionally allowed to like, in case, yes, the headmaster needs to have them do something outside of Hogwarts. Or also, like, it's said that one of the marks of good house elf is that you're not seen. So you're cleaning up and someone comes downstairs into the common room and you just apparate out, and that's fine. And you can just apparate to different places as necessary. But we also see not just Hogwarts house elves, we also see Dobby apparating in. Mm-hmm. And that is interesting, because that seems like a real security loophole. Because, like, you can't just have malicious dark wizards sending their house elves to harm kids at Hogwarts. And, like, I wonder if there is some sort of protection in place that's a little bit more nebulous, where it's like, yeah, other house elves can come in, but not if they have orders to harm someone. And in Dobby's case, he didn't have an order to harm someone. He just chose to do it on his own. And it might be something where, like, there's a little bit of a loophole there that he managed to get through.
Interesting.
Or maybe the laws were made by richer people with house elves and didn't seem to, sometimes you oversee your own comfort against the security of others that are not as rich. So yeah, maybe it was just easier for everyone with house elves to have them come to Hogwarts, go away from Hogwarts, and not have complicated security measures there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was leading towards it, where, like, they want the Hogwarts house elves to be able to apparate in and out and to, buy the Master Carrot when needed. And with that, they're like, all right, well, so we need house elves to pop in and out. Good, great, okay, not thinking about it for another second. And just didn't consider, like, the implications of allowing house elves in and out.
Yeah, and I think that it's very clearly intentional on J.K. Rowling's part to point out the way that wizards don't really think about house elf magic. Like, even the fact that Creature is able to apparate out of the cave because he has the orders to do so, and that Voldemort never considered that when he was making his, magic to keep people from apparating in and out of that cave, and that maybe it was something where, like, the founders never really considered that house elves might have agency to choose, like Dobby, to just choose on their own to come into Hogwarts for their own purposes. But it does make me think that they're, like, okay, yeah.
It might be a little of all of the above. Like, if my theory is correct that all these protections are sort of done ad hoc, separately as people think of them and need them, it might be much more complicated for wizards to do magic that affects what house elves can do. Mm-hmm. And so it might be it's a giant pain in the ass to figure out how to do this, so we don't want to, and we don't think of house elves as a threat anyway, and the Hogwarts ones need to buy groceries anyway, so you know what? Screw it. Like, it'll be fine.
Right.
So, yeah, I think it might just be sort of a little of all of them combining to let the house elves come and go.
It might be literally impossible to stop a house elf from apparating into, like, that. It might just be something that wizards have never, it's either impossible or wizards have never tried to learn how. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it does make me wonder if it's the case that, like, nobody bothered or whatever. I wonder if Dumbledore, after he heard about Dobby, like, basically trying to murder Harry with a bludger, that he was like, maybe I should
time to do something about
this. That's a loophole.
Do something about this and make it that only the Hogwarts house elves can apparate within the school.
Oh my god, you know what you could do? You could enchant their tea cozies, so that serves as, like, their security clearance to get in and out.
I think that Dobby's the only one. Dobby's the only one.
Done. We figured it out.
He uses it as a hat. I don't think the other ones have one.
Well, because the rest of them wear like a toga or something, right?
Yeah, enchant their togas then.
Okay, so yeah, make the enchanted togas the security clearance.
Exactly.
Yep.
Because really, like, if Voldemort was thinking, and like, you know, this is Voldemort we're talking about, so he doesn't think about house elves like this, which might be the whole point. But if he was really thinking, instead of the whole Triwizard tournament thing, he just would have found one of his Death Eaters that had a house elf, or he could have used Winky. Oh, no, Winky had already been sacked. Found one of his Death Eaters that had... Well, okay, Winky had been sacked, but she still would have done it. Found one of his Death Eaters that had a house elf, tell them, go to Hogwarts, grab Harry, and disapparate with him.
Yeah.
Bring him to this graveyard. But no, he doesn't think about house elves, so he had to come up with a whole complicated plan.
Sucks to be him.
Yep.
Okay, so that's apparition. The next way to get in and out of the school, because there's like a dozen, Floo powder. And like, this is one especially where, I'm sorry, Umbridge had a point.
Well, yeah, and it comes back to the concerns around apparating, like just randomly appearing wherever you want, wherever there's a fireplace or a fire burning.
No. I have never read it as that anyone could Floo powder into Hogwarts. I think you could put your head through the fire. I don't think you could put your whole body through the fire.
But even so, it's still a concern. Like, you're sitting somewhere, and I'm not saying any fire. Maybe it is any fire, but it's still concerning that you can just pop up and peek into any fire that you want.
Yeah. Like,
I mean, that's fair. That's fair.
Again, in Order of the Phoenix, a wanted mass murderer flews into the student common room, like where the students are supposed to be safe after 6 p.m. Like, cool as you please. Because this is just a thing that can happen.
He couldn't hurt them. He just had a head in the fire. Like, what would he do?
But we don't know if you know, only the head could go through. Like, if the head could go through, like, plenty of other appendages could as well.
Oh, God.
Okay.
Oh, God. Oh, no. That's a disturbing thought.
I mean, that put an image in my mind that I didn't need. But that aside, I think it is pretty clear that he couldn't his whole body couldn't come through.
I'm not as confident about that as you are.
Think about the third book. They have Dementors all around the school. They, like, whenever Sirius gets in, they're like, how could he possibly get in? Like, if he could use Floo powder, like, by that point, like, Floo powder has been an established thing in the books. It's not like something where, like, she hadn't thought of it yet. Like, Floo powder is established.
It's because Hogwarts is a security nightmare.
Dumb if he could use it.
I have two thoughts on this. So the first one is maybe Dumbledore kind of allowed a Floo connection to headquarters just as a case of, in case Harry needs to get out very quickly. And that's why that worked.
But Sirius does it not just from headquarters, because he does it in Goblet of Fire,
and
too.
And he appears himself, right? He's not kind of called upon, because I thought maybe it was something where you can only call people but not
it's all him.
Receive an unwanted Floo powder call. No, you're right.
So, okay, so this is what I think. Okay, we have in book 6, it says that after Christmas, the security restrictions on Floo powder are temporarily lifted so that students can get into Hogwarts through, like, McGonagall's fireplace. So that makes it clear that at least by book 6...
But that's the increased security in Half-Blood Prince.
Okay, sure. But I would believe that had already existed. But sure, that's the first time we know it existed. I believe that, like... We see Snape use Floo powder within Hogwarts in book 3 when he calls to Lupin. and Lupin comes. But I think that's within Hogwarts, which is different, and I assume that there are restrictions, like you can't just go from the Gryffindor common room into the Slytherin common room or something, but that the offices, the offices of the... I assume it's like the offices of the teachers are connected, and maybe you can like Floo from your office into the staff room or something. But I think that's just within Hogwarts, and then it seems like you are able to, you can put your head in the fire to talk to someone in Hogwarts, or that someone in Hogwarts could put their head in the fire to talk to someone outside of Hogwarts. And to me, that kind of makes sense. Like, okay, so there aren't that many ways of magically communicating. Like, compared to the Muggle world, where we can, like, text each other and email each other and all of those things, like,
I mean, this was the 90s, so...
Little. Okay, but, even so, there was email in the 90s, and, like, there aren't that many ways for people to communicate. So let's say you're a professor who, spends most of your time at Hogwarts, but you have, family or friends or whoever that you want to communicate with. You stick your head in the fire, you talk to them. For those who like live in Hogsmeade, you might like stick your head in the fire and say hello to your family and be like, hey, sorry, I'm running late because of this essay. Like, I'll be there in like, an hour. Don't wait up. So to me, it makes sense that at least for the professor's sakes, that there'd be a way to communicate with people outside of Hogwarts that is like fast and quick and all of that. And that Sirius was one of those students who just like figured out literally like every secret passageway in Hogwarts, like pretty much figured out all of the secrets of the school, and that he like figured out that this was something that the teachers did, and so he decided to try it himself, figured out it worked, and so he knew he could use it as well, but that most people don't really think about that, and it's never been a problem, so nobody's ever, like, stopped it. That's my theory.
It's a very generous theory.
I don't think so. Like... Think how dumb the third book would be if you can Floo powder in. Like, it would just be so dumb. Think how dumb the fourth book would be if you could Floo powder in. They would just, like, steal Harry and Floo him out. Like, literally all of the books become, like, extremely dumb if you assume that anyone can Floo powder in. And, like, I just don't think that's true.
Yeah, I mean, so much could easily be explained or answered by magic. So I agree with you from the standpoint of, like, there have to be boundaries somewhere.
Yeah. And, like, I think that if we're just assuming that the people if we're thinking within the book, the people within the books, like the professors and whoever, when they hear that Sirius Black comes in, it's not like Professor McGonagall and Dumbledore and Snape and whoever are, like, that dumb that they wouldn't be like, he could just Floo powder in. Like, no. Like, they would realize that, so it wouldn't be the case.
Yeah.
Okay, so... by your logic, if, like, head and body are separate, like, Floo things.
Yes.
When Umbridge tries to grab Sirius in the fire, what would have happened? Like, basically, like, Sirius is in, like, Order HQ, Umbridge is in her office, and then their hand and his head are just stuck in the Gryffindor common room fire, and... what
Her
then?
hands would have been as damaged as Harry's, I think. I don't think anything actually would have happened.
I think she just wanted to prove that someone was there.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, if she was able to grab someone's head, she would, like, know that someone was there. I also don't entirely understand how...
she says that I almost caught. So I think she, like, meant to actually catch him. Okay,
but caught doesn't necessarily mean, like, it just could mean I caught that he was there. Like, I caught him as in, like I know that he's there. And, like, if... I also don't know entirely how Floo powder works. It's possible that she can, like, even though she can't pull him into Hogwarts, she might be able to pull his head into her fireplace or something like that and be able to see that it's him. So, like, she just wants proof, and if she has proof, then she could be like, yes, I know that it was Sirius. Okay, I don't know where he is, but that means that, and he was talking to someone in Gryffindor, I am going to take every single Gryffindor person and I am going to force them to have Veritaserum until they tell me that he was here. Like, I think she just wants to prove it, and then she can ask them, well, where is he hiding?
Fair.
You know, I had heard about the only head theory before, and I agree. Otherwise, the books don't really make sense. The only problem I have with that is that it's never explained anywhere. Like, it does make sense, because otherwise, as you said, like, all the other books don't make sense. But why is it never explained that there's kind of two separate things to Floo powder here?
Yeah.
Yeah, because they are treated largely the same way. Like, even when Harry flews his head into the Order, he's like, well, I guess this is the same thing. I'm just going to stick my head in.
I mean, it is the same, but it's also not the same, because he's not traveling. It's just a communication method. Like, I don't know. To me, it seems pretty different, actually showing up in a place versus, like, staying in the place you are
like,
and
you're
talking
physically
to someone.
There in one way.
It's like FaceTiming.
Yeah.
You're like FaceTiming with them magically.
Fire time.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I agree. It's just never explained or called out or called something differently. I think that's why it's so confusing.
Yeah, true.
I feel like this is one of those subjects where we have to, like, just sort of do a lot of the work for Joe. We're being like, well, if everything you wrote is true, then how can this make sense?
And I think there's a pretty simple explanation for how it makes sense. But yes, it does give us, a good half hour of podcast time to discuss rather than she could have just told us in one sentence.
Yep. But okay, so assuming this theory is right, what I'm interested in about Floo is that this is the one case where the Ministry seems to be in charge rather than the headmaster or Hogwarts itself. Because the entire Floo network, I think, is under the purview of the Department of Magical Transportation, because that's how they're watching all the fires in Order of the Phoenix, because Marietta Edgecombe's mom works at that department, and so she's watching all the Hogwarts fires. And because in Goblet of Fire, Arthur says that he talked to the Ministry to get the Dursleys' house hooked up to the Floo. So yeah, I think just the Floo is entirely Ministry purview.
Mm-hmm.
I think, yes, it is entirely... well, except for the fact that Dumbledore is the one that lifts the, like, Floo... like, for them to come into Hogwarts. So it might be if people are coming into Hogwarts, that's still the headmaster. But yes, that the Ministry is capable of watching the entire Floo network. But also, I assume most of the time, like, I think it is new. It is new in Book 5 that they are watching it in Hogwarts and, like, keeping track.
Sorry, Sophia,
What?
but I just pulled up Half-Blood Prince. It's actually the Ministry.
Okay.
The Ministry had arranged this one-off connection to the Floo network to return students quickly and safely to the school.
Okay, thanks for checking, because I just assumed it was Dumbledore. Okay, so the Ministry has control over the Floo network, which makes sense.
Yeah.
But it seems like most of the time, I would assume that it is it's a huge... it's a huge violation of privacy for them to be watching private conversations on the Floo network. So the fact that they're doing that in Book 5 is like, I think a new thing, and is pretty, like, concerning. Like, it's pretty kind of nefarious there.
But I don't think they're watching conversations. Like, my understanding is that, it's kind of like, phone companies right now, where, like, they can tell you, like, who phoned whom, like, sort of, but, like, they can't tell you what was said. So
that's what I meant more, but still pretty nefarious.
Yes.
And to me also speaks to the fact that usually, it's like the teachers having conversations with other people. Like, I think, like, why would they feel the need to watch the Floo network? Like, to me, it's because they want to see what
Think of the children!
But the children are not the ones, like, I think it's like, usually it's like the professors using the Floo network to communicate to people outside the school, or even within the school. And they don't trust the Hogwarts professors. So they're saying, okay, who are they communicating with outside the school? They suspect some of them are part of the Order of the Phoenix, or at least in their mind on Dumbledore's side. They're like, who are they communicating with? And then Umbridge sees this very mysterious, repeated conversation going on between I assume it's unplottable, even on the Flute network, some unplottable location and the Gryffindor common room late at night. And she's like, this seems really suspicious. Like, this is probably someone who is, like, illegal in some way, who is in a hideout. And so she, like, is guessing that it's Sirius Black. So I think that it's, like, very unusual for students to be using it, and it's more like she's spying on the other teachers.
That makes sense, because the way Umbridge says it, right, that all the fires are being watched except mine. So, like, I think the default is that the Floo network just sort of monitors, like, who is connected and who isn't, and then just doesn't care about who's calling whom. And then as security increases, then they start looking into it. You know, again, I think, like, the telecom companies is a good analogy, where, like, normally they're just concerned about, like, who has a phone, who doesn't, who's on our plan. But then, like, suddenly, you know, people start subpoenaing them, and they're like, oh, I guess we do know who called who.
Yeah,
Right.
I think this is just one of these examples of where wizards, just like muggles, have to let go of their privacy here and there, or just not be too concerned about it, because the reality is the ministry or the government is able to, or the cell networks, they are able to track who we are calling. So you just have to be careful.
Yeah.
You have to be mindful of it.
Mm-hmm. It does open up a bit of a plot hole in Deathly Hallows when, like, you know, the Death Eaters are trying to get into Hogwarts, because at that point the ministry is Death Eater controlled. So theoretically, whoever wants to should just be able to Floo in. No.
I think that, like, there is still some, like, built-in nobody, like, that I assume that Dumbledore, even if the ministry was the one who had enabled this Floo connection, I assume there's, like, some sort of connection between the ministry and Dumbledore, where, like, the headmaster has to give permission or whatever for that to happen, because I don't think it makes sense that just, like, the ministry unilaterally can decide to send anyone in at any point.
I mean, they're the government, so...
No, but I think
we may not like it,
it's like
but
plugging out the
just,
phone, you know?
Like, some checks and balances, you know? Like...
Yeah, I don't know. The way I rationalize it away is I think that, like, the professors probably, like, blocked all the fireplaces, you know, when McGonagall was mobilizing the school. She was like, you know, they can Floo in, but they're not getting out of that fireplace.
Yeah. And also, if we think about the school as magical, the school might be just like, no, I reject them. Like, they're not allowed to come in. Like, you know, I could imagine the school just being able to do that. Just be like, no, not coming in. Bye.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. I could see that too. Because, yeah, I do think that's just the security thing that has to be plugged. And I mean, like, how many fireplaces could Hogwarts have? Right? Like, even if it's like...
It's an old castle. It needs
exactly.
heating.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
They need a lot of fireplaces.
What I don't understand... Sorry, this... Okay, I'll hold it in. All I would say is... You're wizards. Why is your heating so bad? But anyway, moving on. They always seem to be cold. But to me, that is, like, accurate to Britain in general, who just, like, is a very cold, like, wet place and does not seem to care that much about heating. So I don't understand.
You know what? any other week I would have agreed with you, but this week, listen, I have heating in my apartment. I turned up the dials all the way. The hot air was flying out of it, and I was still freezing at home. Like, there comes a point.
There's no getting warmer.
That's fair enough. That's fair enough.
Okay, so I think those are all the ways in and out of the school that I'm thinking of we need to address security-wise.
Except for, like, the Vanishing Cabinet, in that, like, before the Vanishing Cabinet was smashed, like, there was just a cabinet in Hogwarts for who knows how long that you could just, like, go in between Hogwarts and Borgin and Berks, of all places. That is definitely a security concern.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, I feel like that's not really, like, we can't blame, the administration for that one. I was like, that's a loophole.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay, the final way is just, like, walking into the grounds.
Yeah, well, and with all the secret passages.
Yeah, the front door.
The least secure
Who's
one.
checking everybody in at the front door?
No, but this is a question I do have, though, is that, like, okay, like, when Harry comes in the 6th book, when he comes with Tonks, and he's, like, trying to open the door with, like, Alohomora, and he's like, I could climb and whatever, and it's, like, basically Tonks is being like, no, because of all these new security measures, which makes me wonder, what would it have looked like to just go through the front door on an ordinary time before that?
Oh, you just stroll on in.
Well, I assume not when, like, Sirius Black is on the loose. Like, I assume you don't stroll on in, but, like, Harry just didn't know about it. But, like, also, like, on Hogsmeade weekends, wait, obviously when the Dementors were there.
With Sirius Black, you do stroll in unless you're Sirius Black. Because remember Flitwick was teaching the front doors to recognize Sirius? So they're like, This is the one guy you don't let in.
Which is so funny, because it's like, he can do magic. I mean, he doesn't have, like, a wand at that point, so I guess he can't transfigure himself. But theoretically, if he had a wand.
Or if he just, like, had on a wig and sunglasses.
Yeah, exactly. But, like, during Hogsmeade weekends, like, it seems like, the front doors are just open and kids just, like, come in and out throughout the day. So it's like, what is the security there? I'm not sure.
Well, but that's why they need permission slips.
Exactly. In case they die. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, Katie
Oh.
Bell.
Live to tell the tale, barely.
Story of Hogwarts lives to tell the tale.
I mean, really, the fact that, like, they only had one kid die, like, in the first, like...
Yeah, that's pretty good.
5-6 years, Frankly, my high school was deadlier than Hogwarts.
Actually, mine too, come to think of it. Just thinking of who sadly passed.
Exactly.
Yeah. Dumbledore likes it a little loosey-goosey at the school. I think he enjoys some of the chaos. It keeps the school exciting. It develops some character in these students. I think some of this is very intentional.
I mean, fair enough. Yeah, I think... Dumbledore also has they grow up by getting into scrapes. Like, it's fine. Yeah.
Builds character, kid.
Yeah. So, actually, we were talking, I think, Andrew, you said, like, the questions of privacy versus security. And I feel like this is most apparent in the question of mail. So the question of screening mail into Hogwarts comes up in books 5 and 6. And it's actually a fairly tricky one, I suppose, as it is in the Muggle world. Because Umbridge basically just has her students, like, opening everyone's mail, which is just all kinds of f***ed up. But then in Half-Blood Prince, Dumbledore's like, okay, no, but, like, maybe we screen for dark magic. And I was like, that seems like a good compromise.
Yeah. It is interesting. Of the items we've discussed so far, this one is probably, like you mentioned, it's the first Muggle issue as well, I think, that we've really discussed here. And it is a big issue. The mail thing, I kind of feel like, getting back to what we were talking about with the Floo network, it's a reality of the world. It's like these aren't very secure methods of communication, and it's just something you have to keep in mind while using them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think in book 6, my sense is that mainly what's being checked in the mail is like packages in terms of like, are the the actual things being sent to someone. I don't think, do we have any indication whether they're reading people's mail? I don't think so.
No. I think that's the difference. Is in 5, Umbridge was reading people's mail. In 6, I think they're just screening for magic.
Yeah, so, and that to me makes a big difference because there's a difference between like what you are communicating to someone else, which should be private, versus if you are sending something to someone else, then it needs to like follow the law and the school rules and all of that and be safe and everything like that.
Yeah. And apparently their screenings aren't, like, terribly thorough, mind you, because the love potions get in.
Right. And, like, Filch, it seems like, is the main one in charge, and he's not a wizard. So
Why? Yeah. Who thought that was a good idea?
I mean, most of Filch's job, I'm like, you should really have a wizard doing this. Like, what is going on here? So, I don't know.
You know, I think Dumbledore doesn't take it that seriously. I think he thinks if people want to infiltrate, they will be able to infiltrate. I don't remember if it's just a movieism or if it's actually also in the books where he says that basically the most dangerous things are the students themselves right now because they're already inside.
That's going to be a movieism because I don't remember that.
Then that's in the movie, yeah. But I think that's basically the right idea. And there's something called, security theater, where you pretend you do a lot of things to check, and actually mostly it deters people from doing stupid things. But if they really sit down and think about it, they could still do a lot of dangerous things. And I think Dumbledore knows that, and he can only do so much. And I think he's very lax on those security measures.
Ron also points that out, right, in Half-Blood Prince, because Filch is like, probing them on their way out of Hogwarts, and Ron is like, what's it matter if we're bringing dark stuff out of Hogwarts?
But they also probe them on the way back in. So, like, it is kind of like, it's like more security than necessary in areas where it's kind of dumb. But I don't agree that Dumbledore isn't taking it seriously. I think that, like, the main thing that we see getting into the castle in the 6th book, Vanishing Cabinet aside, is the poisoned mead. And I guess, honestly, if a student really wanted to poison someone, they could Dumbledore by that point knows that Draco Malfoy is a threat. So, like, and Draco Malfoy has potions ingredients. Draco Malfoy could poison him on his own. I think that he didn't really think of the fact that, like, Draco would try to do this whole rigmarole of, like, okay, I get the poison mead in, and then Slughorn is the one who gets it to Dumbledore, and then, like, Dumbledore is probably more like, okay, yeah, Draco might try to slip a poison into my glass, but, like, I can probably catch that, whatever, and doesn't really think about the fact that, like, Draco's plan is a lot more,
involved.
There are a lot more steps to it, and which makes it ultimately more dangerous, because there are a lot more places for it to end up in the wrong hands.
Do we think there's some kind of, like, anti-poison charm on, like, the Great Hall tables? Because, like, I think that would make a lot of sense to have that, because, otherwise that is really not safe, and it doesn't make much sense to, like, test every single dish for poison. So that also might explain why Draco had to, like, go the long way around and, like, have a gift of poisoned mead, because he's like, well, I can't, like, poison anyone at mealtime.
Dumbledore would totally take Draco up on the offer if he says, like, oh, here, have a glass of wine I just brought to you.
Yeah.
But I think that Draco is also Draco is a coward, and I think that he did not want to risk getting caught doing something like, slipping up behind him and slipping something into his drink or something like that. He doesn't want to do the straightforward route because he wants as much plausible deniability, as much distance, as much everything. And also he doesn't really want to watch Dumbledore die. He doesn't want to have any, he wants to distance himself as much as possible from it. So to me, it doesn't necessarily follow that is the reason that Draco didn't take a more straightforward route. I think that's just Draco's personality. But I could totally see there being some sort of, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of the same way I'm convinced that all of Hogwarts is under a birth control charm, because, they're not having it.
It does seem mighty convenient that there haven't been any issues there.
Maybe they have really good sex education there. I don't know, just imagine heads of houses doing sex education. Your poor Slytherin sitting there.
No, Snape just being
That is my favorite scene from Puffs. Just you have the donut and the wand and Lily. But yeah, so the interesting thing about all of this security stuff is, again, the fact that it seems to mostly come back to the headmaster. I think sort of what we figured out is that the headmaster is in charge of who flies in, who apparates in, who portkeys in, and the ministry is just in charge of the Floo. And I don't quite know which is better, because, on the one hand, I suppose, having a government makes sense, rather than having the headmaster be a law unto themselves. On the other hand, when you look at the government,
Well, if we believe that Hogwarts has a hand in choosing the headmaster, then I feel more comfortable with the headmaster having that much control. Because Hogwarts is yes, this is someone I approve of. And
so you trust the sentient castle more than representative democracy?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, all right, yeah. No, I agree. I just wanted to confirm.
Yeah. I think Hogwarts knows what's best for itself and its students, and I think it has some of that, that, soft magic stuff. It has that magic in it that it just is this is my duty, is to protect the school, and therefore, I don't know. It's just it doesn't have as many political interests. This is its only interest.
True. No, I agree, yeah. Have a dictatorial headmaster chosen by the castle. I like it. Which, now that we're talking about this, I'm really amused by Fudge in Goblet of Fire, where he's like, now, Dumbledore, I've always let you have free reign. And it's yeah, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
The castle lets me have free reign. That's what's up.
Yeah.
But okay, so we've talked a lot about how people can get in and out of Hogwarts, which is, the answer is more easily than they should. But let's talk about what happens to the students in the castle. Because it's not just external threats, there's plenty of internal threats to these students' safety as well.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, there's, a lot of deadly beasts in the castle, which, some are the administration's fault, like Fluffy. Some less so, like the basilisk. But, still, more bloodthirsty creatures than you'd want in a school.
That is true.
Again, though, it builds character in the students. So once they're out in the real wizarding world, they can fight these creatures. No, it is a major issue. At least with the basilisk, they didn't want it there.
I mean, apart from the basilisk, that was not wanted there, students are technically not allowed in the Forbidden Forest. Who else is there?
Unless
What
it's
else
time
is
for
there?
Fluffy.
detention.
Fluffy, they're also not allowed to be there.
Oh, right, yes, they were warned. Informed consent. So actually, about the basilisk. So basically, the basilisk is petrifying students, and they're like, oh gosh, that's a shame. That's, very upsetting. And then it's only once a student is, actually killed or taken into the chamber that they're like, oh no, we gotta shut this shit down. So, My question is, opening the debate, did they threaten to close the school too soon or too late, or did they get it just right?
Too late. I mean, it's outrageous that the school was still open. And did they tell the parents about that?
That's the real thing for me, that they don't tell the parents.
Yeah. It's crazy how much they don't share. And did none of the students want to tell their parents? Would they rather be at the school under the threat of the basilisk rather than go back home? I guess.
They're really into their education.
And I think to me, this really speaks to who the basilisk is targeting. That the basilisk is targeting Muggleborns, and Muggleborns are not, their parents don't have the same sway over Hogwarts as people with wizarding parents. What are the Muggles gonna do? What are their Muggle parents going to do about it? Nothing. They can't, go to the Ministry Magic and, demand whatever. They can't even go to Hogwarts. They can't do anything.
Oh.
They don't have any representation in the magical world. So, to me, this speaks to the fact that, okay, I was thinking about this recently, that there are fewer people left at Hogwarts in their third year for Christmas than in the second year. So and to me, that speaks to the fact that, the magical parents see their kids as being under threat because of Sirius Black. So the magical parents are taking them all home. Whereas when it's just the Muggleborns, the wizarding parents are oh yeah, that kind of sucks. Sucks for them, but my kid's going to be fine. So nothing is done. So I think that really speaks to prejudice in the wizarding world.
Oh, that's gross.
But that's very realistic, right?
Oh.
I like that. I don't like that, but I like that theory.
I never thought of that, and yeah, wow, I never thought of it, and that is a very bleak view of wizarding society.
Yeah, but unfortunately, I think it's accurate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Carolina, Sophia, what do you also think? Also, too late to close the school?
Well, yes, but also I think it's very realistic that schools tend to try to make everything seem fine until there's an actual emergency or actual kid nearly dying, for them to actually act. I think that's not too unrealistic, unfortunately.
Yeah.
This is what I think they should have done, is they should have gone to the Ministry and okay, this is also Fudge's fault, because Fudge, what does he do? He comes and arrests Hagrid, and he's oh, well, we don't actually think it's you. It's just gotta be seen doing something.
It's security theater.
What Fudge could actually do is get all of his people on task with enchanting some other building, creating some other building, temporary structure that would be safe, moving the students there for the rest of the year, so that they can continue their education. And sure, it's not as roomy as Hogwarts, it's not as nice, but it's fine. They continue their education, and while that happens, they send Aurors into the school to search everything and see if they can find this monster, and don't let people back in until they find the monster.
That is a cool idea. Doesn't this new temporary place open itself up to a whole host of security problems then as well?
Yeah.
But at least there's not a basilisk.
Yeah. But where is this temporary place? Is the giant squid a threat now? But
there must
Yeah,
be
I'm kind of with Andrew on that one. I think it's harder to make an ersatz school safe for 1,000 kids than you'd think. But also, to your point, they should have done that over the holidays. Over Christmas break, being guess what? No one's staying at Hogwarts over Christmas. Y'all go where you need to go. We'll, rent rooms at the Three Broomsticks for the kids who've nowhere to go. And, send Aurors in for that 2 weeks to search the school. The fact that they were just well, we'll just hope it resolves itself. I'm definitely with you that something should have been done.
They knew Dumbledore knew they wouldn't find whatever the monster was, because Dumbledore knew it had to be an heir of Slytherin. So it wouldn't have done any good.
I think, yes. From yes. I think if I'm thinking about it from Dumbledore's perspective, that doesn't make sense because he wants to figure out who he believes that it's Voldemort.
Right, he wants to figure out how.
I mean, he knows that it's Voldemort doing it.
Yeah.
He just needs to figure out how. And so for him, it makes sense to keep everyone there so he can, like, keep an eye on them and try to figure out what's going on. But it's not putting the students' safety first. It's putting solving the problem first, which, I mean, is ultimately in favor of the students' safety, but is taking a certain amount of risk with it. It's like, at the end of the day, it does end up making the students safer to get to the root of the problem, and he knows that's the only way to do it. But
it's very Dumbledore-esque.
It takes a big risk. It takes a big risk.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I don't know where I come down on whether it's too late or just right, because, like, I don't think closing down the school, like, was the move. I definitely think that, like, they should have done a lot more to make the school safer. But yeah, I don't quite know where I fall on that one.
Yeah.
Like, they definitely couldn't do it any later than they did because, you know, Sophia, to your point, like, everything up until the death, they could brush under the rug. You know, like, kids were petrified, being like, well, it's fine, they're no worse for the wear. Like, you know, sign a couple NDAs and call it a day. But, like, no, if a kid dies, I was like, then the parents have to be informed.
Right. And also, to my earlier point, the fact that it's Ginny Weasley, a pureblood. You know, that is what Dumbledore says, is that when they heard that Arthur Weasley's daughter was brought into the chamber, they are all, like, all of the governors are storming back to Dumbledore being like, Malfoy, like, blackmailed us, please come back.
Okay. And
you do wonder, like, would the same be true if it was not the daughter of one of their colleagues or one of their friends, someone they knew?
Okay. To give slightly more credit, they also are about to shut the school down when Myrtle is killed, and she's a Muggleborn.
That is true. That is fair, and that was a long time ago. But yeah. I do think that the storm of owls that Dumbledore gets might be in part because the governors are now scared for their own kids. Yeah.
Okay, so that's the deadly animals portion of it, which, yeah. So Oreo actually made this point, which I found baffling, where she said in the notes that the educational decree forbidding student organizations, societies, teams, groups, and clubs, that they can only exist with the approval of the High Inquisitor. She says that a form of it makes sense and there should be oversight for what clubs exist. I hard disagree with that. I'm like, no, like, leave the students their freedom of assembly. But I'm curious to hear your thoughts, especially Carolina, because, again, the German perspective on it all.
Well, I also agree that it shouldn't be like that. But I think, again, it's very realistic. Because I think all schools have something like that in place. You can't just form a club and do things and call yourself a school club. You need to have some kind of, sometimes it's not even approval, sometimes it's just kind of signing up. But of course that implies a certain level of approval. I just think it's a bit difficult to define what is a student organization, because if you have something like more people than 3 gathering, that doesn't really have to be a club. It could just be, so like student organizations, okay, societies, okay, team, yeah, but groups should be allowed to exist, you know, study groups. You don't have
right,
to.
Right. Like, what if What if the four of us are
Yeah.
friends and like want to meet Wednesday evenings?
See, and that's what I highly
Right.
disagree. Because you can
Exactly.
form a study group without being an official student organization or student club. I think it's fair to say that you need to kind of sign up your club to be an actual club when you get certain perks, maybe like get a room or be able to train on the Quidditch field or whatever you need to do. But if you just want to meet as a group out of similar interests without having a specific plan, then I don't think you need approval for that.
Yeah.
And even if you have a specific plan, like okay, if we think about the DA, their plan is to practice like defensive spells, which is basically like extra learning.
Yeah.
Let's think of it that way. They want to do extra homework, basically. They want to do extra learning, and they also want to just like complain about the administration, whatever. Like, yeah, that should be allowed as long as they're not doing anything like illegal or like against school rules, which, I mean, because of Umbridge, it is now against school rules. But like, yeah, I think if you're an official club, then yes, it has to be something that's like registered. But if you're just hanging out with a group of people doing something every week, yeah, I totally agree.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought a lot of the, like, oversight of clubs in the Muggle world that you talk about has to do with the fact that, like, the kids are staying in school, right? That, like, if you have kids in the school building hours after, you know, classes have ended, then you sort of want to know, like, who's where and why, and, like, you know, is there an adult involved, sort of that kind of thing. So I thought it would be different in a boarding school where just like, well, they're all in the building anyway, so who cares, you know, who's meeting with whom.
Yeah, I'm okay with somebody getting a sign off from some professor in the school to the points that are being raised. Like, we need to be aware of where students are, and has one professor at least endorse the idea. But the idea of like one single person at the school being in charge of all of it, no.
But like, I think to Irvin's point, I think it being a boarding school means that like, yeah, you should be allowed more freedom in what you're doing, like outside of your regular school hours with other people. I mean, my high school, we had like a club period that was like during the day, so it wasn't so much about like an after school you have to keep track of people. And even there, like, our clubs did need to be approved, and we had like a like faculty sort of advisor to the club. But yeah, that still seems to me like, okay, it's happening within the school building, and it's like during the school day, so you're not going to have a club that's like anti-administration club, like like the DA basically is. Like, that's not going to be an official club. Yeah, I guess I'm sort of like, I think there is a difference between like official clubs and like official school clubs that you would say like, yes, this is what I did at Hogwarts. I was part of the Quidditch team. I was part of the Gobstones Club, and I was a prefect. Like, this is what you tell your new employer. And versus like, I had a study group with my friends.
Yeah.
And I think if it takes away resources, you need some kind of oversight. And also, if it's a safety issue, if I now decide like to form a kind of, I don't know, free climbing group and start climbing the castle, people should know. You know, it's different if students just meet and talk, but even a practical defense against the dark arts might be something where teachers could argue to have some kind of oversight, because it's not completely safe always.
But if you, I agree that it isn't completely safe, but like, often the homework that the students get for class is do this spell on your own for homework. So, you know, there are other safety concerns, like even just for other classes, like you might have been trying to transfigure something and instead make something explode, but like that is just built into the school as just like that's part of doing homework.
No, you're right.
Yeah. Which actually, that's a good transition into the no magic in corridors thing. So like, you don't want the kids dueling, which, fair enough. We can agree with that. But in the first book or two, I think it's Percy, right, who says that there's no magic allowed in the corridors when Harry and Draco get into it over Valentine's Day. But then that rule is just kind of forgotten about and never mentioned again after the first two books.
I'm not sure that's true. I mean, it's just that most of the time that we see them doing magic in the corridors, they're dueling, so they get in trouble for dueling. Yeah.
But, like, it doesn't make sense, because, like, you know, I think in book 5, I think it's book 5, where people just start putting bubblehead charms on themselves walking through corridors, like, you know, because of how noxious it is. Like, clearly the whole no magic in corridors thing, like, isn't reasonable in a magic school.
Okay. Yeah. But by that point, like, total chaos has broken loose. So maybe that's not the best, the best proof, but I'd say yes. I'd say probably magic like, oh, my bag ripped and I need to repair it. I think that is probably just fine. So it's probably a little bit more of a, like, you can't be shooting spells at other people in the corridors. Like, you cannot use magic against anyone else.
Yeah. Walking around the school to your classes and doing whatever else should not feel like a threat or feel like you're in a threatening space.
I mean, I think generally it's not allowed to use spells against other students, right? That's only concerned with
sure. But, like, in the case of, like, maybe in your common room, you're practicing the Expelliarmus charm with your friend, and that's fine. But, like, in the corridors, you can't just be shooting Expelliarmus or whatever at people.
Yeah, I was thinking you can just not use spells in the corridors. If you already, like, put the bubble head around your head in the classroom and then just walk around, you're not really using the spell in the corridor. You just already have it in place.
Yeah, and I'm sure there are, like, exceptions for things like, you broke something and you need to repair it, or, like, you know, I'm sure it's not, like, super duper strict, but this also seems like a Filch rule as well. Like, that Filch hates when the students are able to do magic and, like, he can't do anything about it if they're doing magic in the corridors, and so it's kind of control. And like a lot of Filch rules, the other teachers don't care that much.
Yeah. I don't know. I always thought of it as, like, sort of one of those things that evolved as the series went on, because I feel like, you know, as the series progressed and in the later books, magic becomes much more of, like, an everyday thing. Like, sort of in the first, like, I'd say 2 or 3 books, it's like, I am now casting a spell. I am doing magic. It is like a thing. And then as the series progresses, and part of it is just Harry becoming more comfortable in this world, it's just like, oh yeah, I, like, you know, summon my pencil case, I, like, fix my glasses, you know, like, they use magic for everything, because it's just, like, it's a thing that, you know, is completely regular in their lives. So I'm wondering if this is sort of one of those cases where just the series evolved, and that rule kind of just went out the window, and Joe was like, shh, never mind. Or if my other explanation is that the whole no magic in corridors thing is just for underclassmen. That it's like, you know, the first and second years, they're like, okay, no. We want y'all doing magic only in strictly controlled environments. And, like, then with the older years, they're like, all right, like, if you need to cast a simple spell, like, you know, go about your day.
I don't know. I think, to me, it doesn't seem like, as the series goes on, anything really contradicts this. Like, to me, they do more magic in the corridors, but either nobody catches them or they do catch them and they get in trouble for it. And so, I don't know. Like, I think maybe the no magic in the corridors was, like, Percy's kind of way of phrasing it, that is just, like, he's a very black and white thinker. He's like, there is no magic in the corridors. That is the rule. Whereas the rule might be a bit more like, these sorts of spells are not allowed in the corridors, or like, I don't know, or just like in general, magic's not allowed in the corridors, but it's, for the prefect or whoever catches them, it's like on a case-by-case basis whether you're going to do anything about it. Because also they're just like not being watched all the time. There aren't nearly enough teachers. There are like not that many teachers.
Yeah.
Or prefects for the number of students. So it's like, I think just they get away with a lot. And like, also this is very realistic that like younger kids are like, we have to follow the rules exactly. Like, and the older kids are like, whatever, we know we can get away with this.
But I think
that's how I read it.
Yeah, I think I like that idea of it being a kind of generalization of no magic, but it's actually not no magic. There might be very specific rules, for example, no dueling, but they just tell first years no magic, and then as they continue in their years, they learn, I can actually do those kind of things, or nobody cares if I do a certain spell that doesn't harm anyone.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and the other most dangerous place at Hogwarts, besides the corridors, apparently, is the Quidditch pitch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, listen, like, wizards are bouncy. So, like...
Yeah.
Are they?
They are. I mean, literally, Neville falls from, like, 20 feet, and he's just like, oh, no, I sprained my wrist. Like, I think wizards are canonically much bouncier than muggles. So I don't think it's as bad as we might think, the whole flying on broomsticks 50 feet in the air.
I don't know if I would agree, but I will admit, yeah, they can fix these injuries, as we see with Skelligro. I think when it comes to Quidditch, confusing the show segment on MuggleCast, first year, second years, maybe even third years, while training, there should be some sort of padding on the grounds to catch them and make them even bouncier. If we're saying canonically they are bouncy to begin with, it just seems very dangerous to put kids on brooms and let them fly. And then, of course, once you're actually in the game too, it's dangerous, very dangerous.
I mean,
but like we see Harry falls like from a really like with the Dementors, and like they like you can use magic to stop someone from like hurting themselves when they fall from that height. So I think there's just a trust of like magic can be used in the moment. And like honestly, padding, I don't think it would help. I think it's more like magical padding.
It's better than nothing.
At 50 feet in the air, I don't know how much better than nothing it is.
I think you just die.
A nice big 10-foot padding thing. I don't know what you call it. Mat.
Marshmallow.
10-foot thick mat.
Yeah.
Yeah, marshmallow. There you go. A cloud to catch them.
Because I have had many concussions, what I get worried the most about is like concussions and brain damage because of the bludgers. And I'm like, is there just like a potion that fixes that? Like Harry gets hit so hard in the head, like, by the beater's bat, like or by the bludger or whatever at close range. And like, I'm just so confused on like how they fix the brain part of things. Like I understand that Madame Pomfrey can like fix his skull, but what about his brain? Like I don't know.
Yeah, there should be they should have helmets in the game.
But
for starters.
This is a PSA for everyone. Helmets don't stop you from getting concussions. They can stop you from having your skull like fractured or broken or whatever, but they don't stop you from getting concussions, and sometimes they can make concussions worse. So they need like a spell around their head that will just like cause the bludger to like swerve if it's about to hit their head or something. That would be, if I had to change one thing about Quidditch, that's what it would be.
But then again, I think I'm saying that for the third time now, it's very realistic, because think of school sport or sport for kids in general.
Yeah.
Kids get hurt a lot, and also knowingly hurt.
Yeah.
And permanently damaged just for them to be good at sport or a certain sport. So I think the lack of concern here is very realistic again.
It is. I agree.
It reminds me of the bubblehead charm that's used in the Triwizard Tournament, like just something protecting them, surrounding their head.
Yes, they should all be playing with bubblehead charms. I agree.
Yeah, and it's very possible that there is just a magical solution for this that they don't mention, in which case, like, I think that one of the big things about safety at Hogwarts is, like, yes, things are more dangerous than the normal school, but they're also not, because it's so much easier to, like, fix injuries. So it's kind of like, yeah, you hurt for a moment and it's done. Like, so I don't know. It might be that it's like, yeah, it really hurts to get hit in the head by a bludger, but like you take a potion, your brain is fine. I don't know.
Yeah. Do you think the bludgers might be enchanted to not hit heads?
No, because Harry gets hit in the head.
But that's because Cormac, like, brains him at, like, you know, point-blank range.
Sure, but, like, we get... there's at least one other commentating moment where Lee Jordan is like, ouch, like, that hurt, like, it hit her in the back of the head, that hurts, or whatever, that must hurt, or whatever. Like, there are other moments where people get hit in the head.
Touche. Yeah, no, I just think that they rely a lot on wizards being bouncy, and I think that's also sort of what Madam Hooch is there for. I think sort of keeping the Quidditch players alive is going to be part of her job responsibilities.
Yeah. And, like, Professor McGonagall is always watching. Like, she can step in, like...
I mean, as the twins say, no one's died in years.
Yes, exactly.
Reassuring.
But actually, Andrew, you brought up the Triwizard Tournament, and, like, this is one of the cases where I was like, I'll defend Quidditch as just, like, sometimes it'd be like that. The Triwizard Tournament is just nonsense. Like, what were they thinking?
Yeah, well, it does seem very dangerous. And I mean, for me, the biggest issue is that Harry is basically forced into participating, even though he, honest to goodness, did not put his name into the Goblet of Fire. I said calmly. So it's cruel. It's like Harry genuinely didn't do it, so he should not have to compete. And instead, he's being forced to compete in this very, very dangerous tournament. It's so unfair to him.
Yes.
And I read that as, like, this is not, like, Dumbledore or whoever's fault. It's not the Ministry's fault exactly, because this is how the Goblet of Fire works. This is how it's always worked. It's like a magically binding contract where it's, like, kind of like the unbreakable vow. Like, you will be in big, big trouble if you don't participate. But why do you need to do it that way? Like, like, why can't you just not have
right? I'm like,
override. Yeah,
well, I'm not sure.
Like, make a special exception.
I don't think you can override it. I just don't think you can. Like an unbreakable vow, it's like you made the vow. Like you sign the contract. It's magically binding. It's not like with Snape with the unbreakable vow, he can't just, like, override it. I don't think you can override it, but, like, why do you have to use the Goblet of Fire?
Yeah, why are you choosing champions with magically binding contracts?
Exactly. That's what I'm like, why don't you make a new modern version of the Goblet of Fire where it's like, you won't die if you don't participate in this tournament, or, like... Yeah.
I mean, I think it's like what we were saying earlier, where, like, you know, no one realizes it's a problem until it is. You know, I would hope that the next Triwizard Tournament they host, that they're just like, okay, so everyone gets to, you know, like, we're going to pick champions, and then everyone can drop out if they want, and, you know, we'll just pick someone else.
And also, I think it's also like, okay, I think that Harry probably could have gotten away with doing much less.
Yes.
And it's not like the magical contract. Like, the magical contract could have been fulfilled by him doing much less. Like, he could have seen the dragon run around a bit, yelling and flailing, and then been like, I want out, and they would have taken him out, and it would have been fine. Like, I think that, like, it's not like you have to get the golden egg or else. I think it's like as long as he put in some effort, I think he would have fulfilled the contract. But still, probably it should not exist in the first place.
Do you not think he has to genuinely try? Like, he doesn't have to succeed.
Yes, but that could be him genuinely trying. Like, imagine, like, if he hadn't known about the dragon.
Yeah, no.
Just showed up
if
there
he hadn't.
and was
no,
like,
absolutely.
oh, there's a dragon. and I'm 14 and don't have any spells, he could shoot a few stunning spells at it, be like, oh no, that doesn't work, and then be like, I don't know any other spells.
True, but he knows
Be like,
about the dragon.
Expelliarmus?
Well,
Like,
I've
I don't
tried
know.
everything.
I agree if he didn't know about the dragon, but he did know, so now
Yeah.
he had to actually try.
Yeah, I think he does have to actually try, but what that looks like could have been just him being like, I don't know.
how to swim.
Yeah.
Just wait
Yeah.
around.
I'm just going to say there are no Gryffindors on this panel, and I think it shows, because all of us are just like, yeah, why? Like, no, we're not trying to deadly competition for no good reason. And he's like, rah, glory, nobility, chivalry.
Show.
Yeah. Cho, really the biggest motivation.
Yeah.
No, for me, it's the second task that just gets me. Because in the first one, they're like, we have professional dragon tamers on standby. For the third task, they're like, we have grown-ups patrolling the maze. The second task, nothing. Like, sure, go underwater with various monsters and deadly things, using magic that expires after an hour or two, and it'll probably be fine.
Mermaids,
Maybe.
supposed to, or mer people supposed to like look out for them. Wasn't that how Fleur was rescued?
I don't know. We find out how Fleur was
maybe that's
rescued.
just in my head.
But she does get rescued.
She does get rescued,
So that's a good sign.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
I think that the mer people theoretically are supposed to sort of look after them, because like I think that when like, Harry has that moment when he's like struggling to breathe, and like the mer people are next to him as he's like trying to get to the surface, and he's like, what if they just drag me back down like once my gillyweed is done? And like they definitely were there to be like, oof, he looks like he's about to pass out. If he does, let's pull him to the surface. But also, we didn't see any mer people until they got to the, to where they lived. So yeah, how does Fleur get out? I don't know. But she does get out, so that's something.
True. Yeah, I just, like, my memory is that Harry is, like, literally, like, losing air, like, sort of 1 second away from drowning. And I was like, y'all cutting it a bit close here.
Yes, he is. But the mer people are right there, and he does manage to make it to the surface. So I think, like, 2 seconds later, they would have been pulling him out.
But don't you get brain damage from drowning? Like, even for a bit? Again, too dangerous.
I think that if you are still conscious, then you are not at that point.
Okay. I admit to not being an expert in drowning. I haven't done it very often.
That's a good problem to have.
But yeah, any other thoughts on the safety of Hogwarts students, and how we should improve it?
Actually, I do have a thought, and this is going to be controversial.
Love it.
Okay. So, I admit, if I was a parent to a Hogwarts student, I would be, yelling about all of these things and being like, take care of my kid better, all of that. But if I look from a slightly more distanced standpoint, I'm thinking about, okay, the purpose of a school is to help prepare kids for the world they're going to face after that school. And the wizarding world is just different than the muggle world. It is just more dangerous in that, like, imagine in the muggle world, literally everyone you met has something in their pocket that could kill you.
Oh my god, it's like living in Texas.
Torture you. Okay, but we're just starting with killing. There's more. Kill you, torture you, control you, modify your memory, do all sorts of weird jinxes or whatever on you, transfigure you into a ferret. Like, they could do so many different things with that wand. And literally everybody you meet in your wizarding world has that. Plus, you're in your garden and there's a stump that is gonna try to like attack you or strangle you, and like someone has a pet like hippogriff, and you have to know how to deal with a hippogriff. Like, you know, like there's so many, and like someone just like, you know, one of your friends just decides to like, they're like, yeah, I just really want a whomping willow in my backyard. You know, people could do all sorts of dangerous things, and it's like you have to be constantly prepared. You have to be like constantly on your guard and like able to deal with all sorts of crazy shit going down. And like, how are you going to prepare yourself for that if you're in a really super safe environment where everything is super regimented and everything is like predictable? Because being a wizard is never predictable. So I think there is a good argument for not having Hogwarts be too safe.
That's interesting. I mean, to build on that, like I was saying earlier, I think a lot of what we've discussed today has helped the wizards become the people they are. And I mean, you look at it this way. All the students who go through Hogwarts, they've all turned out okay for the most part.
Except for the dark wizards.
Yeah, well, the ones who survived the ordeal, yeah.
If you enter the school with good intentions, you'll probably come out a good person. So, yeah, I think what makes Hogwarts what it is some of this craziness that goes on. Like I said earlier, I think Dumbledore likes it kind of loosey-goosey at Hogwarts. He likes some of the thrill of the unexpected, the unknown, and it certainly helps keep kids on their toes as well. And apparently parents don't have issues with it either, maybe because they went through Hogwarts with these lax security and safety guidelines as well.
And it's so much more fun that way too, right?
Yes.
It is. It is. It's fun for the reader. It's fun for the students. I would say one thing I would like to change at Hogwarts, being able to unlock a lock with Alohomora is ridiculous.
Well,
I would change
not all locks, but yes.
No.
You would think that when you have a three-headed dog behind a door, it would not be able to unlock with Alohomora.
Right.
But I think that Dumbledore kind of like wanted to see what Quirrell was going to do. He wanted to then see what Harry was going to do. I think he intentionally made that.
Agreed.
Yeah, and like we say, like Dumbledore is willing to sacrifice some safety in order for his bigger plans. And also I think Dumbledore is a big believer in the idea of like, there are some things that kids need to just figure out for themselves. And like, especially with Harry, I think he's sort of like, yeah, could I take Harry under my wing and tell him exactly what to do and all of this stuff? Sure. But like, he needs to learn it for himself, or else it doesn't really like or else it's like not really coming from him. It's not really going to sink in. And he kind of just like is like, okay, let's see what you're made of. Like, let's just give you an opportunity to try some things out, get messy, make mistakes.
Yeah, and learn from those mistakes.
Yeah.
Do you guys think it would be different under McGonagall? Like, do you think a lot of the stuff we talked about McGonagall would, like, you know, get it all whipped into shape and, like, you know, make Hogwarts a much safer place?
To play devil's advocate, though, if she really wanted to change things at Hogwarts, maybe wouldn't she have brought up some of her own concerns to Dumbledore?
But he wouldn't listen.
No.
Well, but she could at least share her concerns.
I'm sure she has.
I believe she has. Frequently.
I am 100% sure. In my headcanon, she is sharing concerns with Dumbledore like all the time. And he's like, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I'd be like, we'll take it under advisement. I'll think about it.
Yeah.
I don't think so, actually.
I'll put a
I
pin in
think
that.
she is also very much on the you need to experience to learn kind of side. And maybe like a few things here and there she doesn't agree with Dumbledore, but I feel like she agrees with the whole concept of the school. And I think taking both of your points, you know, what's missing at the school is some kind of support system. I don't think we need more safety measures. We need someone the kids can talk to, like a parental figure, which, of course, the heads of houses are there, but it's not really, it's more an authority figure and not really someone like a friend or parent figure. And some kind of mental health support would be nice, especially with what they're going through.
Yes.
So I think that would help the safety much more than stricter rules here.
I agree. I think that I'm really glad that they have Madame Pomfrey as someone who they can trust to go to no matter what. Yeah. Like, even if they've done something illegal, they know she's not going to snitch on them, but she's just going to take care of them. And I feel like they need, like a mental health or, like, counselor type person with similar, like, confidentiality rules or whatever, where it's, like, they can go to her and just be like, this is what's going on. Like, I just need someone to talk to about it, get some advice, like, mental health support. Yeah, like, poor Cho Chang, all throughout Order of the Phoenix, I'm like, this girl needs a therapist. And, like, she doesn't have anyone to turn to except for Harry, and he sucks at at being supportive. And, like, she shouldn't be turning to the guy she has a crush on for this kind of support when he's the one who also saw Cedric die. It's like, it's so sad that, like, this is the only person she feels like she can talk to is Harry. And he can't help her because he's so bad at it.
Yeah.
Well, and Harry, too. I mean, after what he went through in Goblet of Fire, needed a therapist or somebody to talk to. He needed
a therapist, too. But he, like, you know, I think that with Cho, like, I think Harry didn't really want to talk about it too much. I think he should have someone to talk to about it with. But, like, Cho was, like, actively like, I need to talk about this with someone. And Harry's like, I don't want to talk to you about it. Like, stop, please. And she doesn't have anyone else to go to.
Yeah. Well, on that optimistic note, I think we're all agreed that Hogwarts is plenty secure. They just need someone to talk it out with. And so I think it's time for the 7 ingredients of today's special. So, in light of how secure Hogwarts is, here are the only 7 ways that Hogwarts was breached in the 7 books.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Only 7? Wow.
I know. That's what I'm saying.
Shocked.
Yeah. So there is flying into Hogwarts, in the case of Charlie's friends in Sorcerer's Stone. There is on the back of someone's head, which, you know, Voldemort. There is using Floo powder, Sirius Black. There is just strolling on in as anime guy, which we have Sirius, we have Wormtail, we have Rita. It's a popular method. We have using Paul's Juice Potion to impersonate someone, Crouch Jr. We have the Vanishing Cabinets, with Draco getting the Death Eaters in. And we have the secret passageway into the Room of Requirement, which the trio and also all the characters in the series use in Deathly Hallows. And there's your 7.
Okay, my thought, though, is I would switch out the Floo powder with the diary, because I think that's more of a breach of Hogwarts security than the Floo powder. Because if we think about the Floo powder more as like a FaceTiming kind of thing, I don't think of it as a breach.
So it depends on whether you think of a breach as like people getting in or things getting in. Because I was like, in my mind, the diary's a bit more of like thing getting in than person getting in.
Fair. I mean, it's like a part of Voldemort's soul, so it's kind of person and kind of not.
I mean, it's only like half a person at most.
Sure, but Sirius is only like a fraction of a person, so I'd say Tom Riddle is maybe a little bit more of a person. I don't know.
Oh, those are excellent semantics. Well done. And today at the pub's jukebox, we have a fantastic song, you know, exactly about what we've been talking about. It's called Hogwarts Lullaby by the Vilas from the Jingle Spells 4 compilation, where, you know, they are singing a really sweet, soothing lullaby about good night, Hogwarts, the safest place, they say. So, give that a listen.
Good night, Hogwarts, the safest place, they say. Good night, Hogwarts. Good night, Hogwarts.
I hate when people use the phrase, like, that Hogwarts is the safest place on Earth and then, like, mention all of the things that are unsafe about being at Hogwarts, because that's not what he meant. He meant it's the safest place to hide something. Not at all the same thing.
Yes, on account of the deadly three-headed dog guarding the thing.
Yes. So
Yeah.
it's not about the
What could be
safety of the
safer?
students. It's about, so yeah, when Hagrid says the safest place on Earth, except perhaps Hogwarts, he's saying the safest place to hide something. Because it's not like Gringotts is a safe place to just, like, hang out. Like, it wouldn't be a safe place to have students just chilling in the vaults of Gringotts. So that is my own personal nitpicky thing, is that I believe that people misuse that.
Sophia, maybe that's where they could have had the Ursat school in Chamber of Secrets. They're just like, okay, kids, we're going to teach you in Gringotts for the next couple months while we, de-serpent the castle.
Yes, yes, I'm sure the goblins would have loved that. Hagrid would have loved it because there would have been dragons. It would have been great.
Dude, you could bring in the goblins for history of magic. Suddenly it'd be everyone's favorite subject. They could have
Yes.
experts on it. Mm-hmm. Missed opportunity.
Yeah, getting the goblins' point of view on things. Yeah. Would be perfect.
All right. Yes. Well, all right. Now that we've solved it, well done, team. I just want to say, Carolina, thank you so much for stepping in and joining us today at the last minute. You were fantastic.
Thank you so much. It was so much fun. Thank you for springing the podcast onto me on such short notice. I tried my best.
You did great. Is there anything you want to plug, anywhere listeners should follow you?
Well, I'm not really very much online, so there's no real way to follow me. But I always have to have one shout out to my cousin, Margarita. That's tradition at this point, I think. and also, right, I need to give a shout out to my brother, who actually this Christmas, because we talked about podcasts, gifted me real audio equipment, and so I need to come back because shamefully I've not set that up yet. So if I get more time, more than 30 minutes time,
more than a 30
then
minutes
next time
notice.
I'll set it up and have really great audio, hopefully.
Oh, well, all right. We'll just have you back on then. Done deal. Yeah. And Andrew, thank you so much for coming by the Three Broomsticks. I'm so excited we got you on, and it was so great having you here at our pub.
Yeah, it was fun to discuss all the security nightmares and concerns as usual. I think we ran through basically everything today. So
Excellent.
yeah, it was good to be on.
Yeah. Andrew, I know you're on a bajillion podcasts and all that. So tell listeners where they can follow you and what you want to plug.
The three I'll plug MuggleCast, the Harry Potter podcast, of course. And then we have Millennial, which, as his name might imply, is a millennial topic-oriented podcast. We're talking about politics, pop culture through the lens of how it impacts millennials. And then What the Hype is our newest podcast. And we're talking about various aspects of pop culture week to week and kind of educating people on why fandoms are hot. So those three are them. But for the listeners of this audience, you'd probably want to start with MuggleCast. Unless you're a Harry Potter podcasted out.
What? No.
Never.
Never our listeners.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, just drop the socials and whatever somewhere in the doc. We'll link to it all.
Cool.
And also another thanks to Carolina for buying us this round of drinks at the pub.
Well, you're very welcome.
Yay!
Thank you. They were yummy.
Thank you. Yes, I was drinking my chaser tea from Adagio Teas because, I try to be on brand, so much obliged. Listeners, if you want to buy us the next round, head on over to patreon.com/3broomsticks with the numeral 3 to sign up. Sophia and I have a great series about how to plan Harry Potter parties that I think we're going to record the second installment of soon.
Yes.
So if you want all our pro tips on party planning, that's the place to find it. And you can also help us out by rating and reviewing us, telling your friends about it. Word of mouth is a big help for our show, and we always appreciate it. And in the meantime, find us on social media, on Twitter, TikTok, ? I'm never quite sure if we're on it. Instagram or Facebook. Our assorted handles and email will be found in the episode description and on our website. The website is 3broomstickspod.com with the 3 spelled out. So there you'll find links to the essays we mentioned. I think we're going to run a poll on whether you think Hogwarts should have stayed open less time, more time, or just the right amount of time when there's a basilisk on the loose. Because, you know, I'm eager to hear the consensus among our listeners. And also, you know, submit a topic for us to talk about and let us know your thoughts all about the security nightmare that is Hogwarts School. So, next time we meet at the 3 Broomsticks, we're going to be discussing speculations on the Harry Potter television show that is coming our way in a certain number of years.
Hopefully next year.
You think?
I think they said 2026.
I thought they were saying, like, winter 26, like the 26-27 winter, so I guess in, like, 2 years.
Yeah. Well, that's why I'm hoping next year.
Fair enough. With that, I've been Irvin.
I'm Sophia.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time in the 3 Broomsticks. Cheers!
Give me big old buckets of butter beer. Give me big old barrels of butter beer. Give me the drink I love so dear. And another round for my friend right here of the sweet old butter beer.
This episode of The 3 Broomsticks was edited by Patrick Musilek. The theme song was written and performed by The Faithful Sidekicks. Make sure to check them out at thefaithfulsidekicks.com.
Yeah, but they're... Yeah, if they just followed the rules.
Okay, I mean, I think the security stuff was sort of the more in-depth one. I think safety will be able to get through somewhat quickly, because TLDR, it's not. But okay, let's get back into it.